Welcome to another episode of the Your Longevity Blueprint podcast. Today, my guest is Dr. Jen Pfleghaar, who is a double board certified physician in emergency and integrative medicine. Through her practice, Healthy by Dr. Jen, she provides virtual care and shares education as at Integrative Dr. Mom. She lives on a mini farm in Tennessee with her husband and 4 children. She loves cheering at her kids' games, lifting weights, reading scripture, and tending to her chickens. Her newest book, an international bestseller, The Perimenopause Reset, was written on a mission to change the health of 500,000 women navigating perimenopause, empowering them with faith-based, science-backed strategies to reclaim their energy, clarity, and joy. That sounds beautiful, but so many of what my patients need. So welcome to the show, Dr. Jen. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for
Well,
having me.
well, tell me the story behind writing this book. I don't know your age. I don't know if you're also in perimenopause, but tell me the story behind it.
Yeah, well, actually, yes, I am in perimenopause. I'm 44. Yeah. So sometimes I forget, or I want to go by my biological age instead of my chronological age. So
Ooh.
then I'd be in my 30s. But yeah, the ovaries, they do go into perimenopause. So I don't know. Honestly, the book was kind of a download from the Lord. I was praying and like, how do you want to use me? Like, what should I do? Because, for so long, I'm a recovering type A personality. So for so long, I was like, this is what God wants me to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I know best and trying to control the thing. So, a couple years ago, I'm just like, okay, Lord, like, I'm open to listening now because I know I'm not in control. So that was really great. And the timing was just like so divine. And, my book came out after I wrote it. And, it was kind of like a self-published thing. And, it's just perfect timing for so many women. And really, the experience, I've like a decade of experience in integrative medicine treating this population because these are the women that are coming to my practice, a cash-based practice, because they went through conventional
Yep.
medicine
Yep.
and yeah, they were gaslit. They were put on SSRIs and birth control and still feeling like garbage because we know that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just such a passion and really like hormones, as you know, like they go with longevity. The goal is to help women through this perimenopause and menopause phase of their life so they can feel good, they don't feel crazy, their relationships are left intact. Or at least, I tell men, I'm like, you need to read my book because so many of you don't understand perimenopause and how their wives need support. There's it's not just the hormones, there's spiritual attacks too, because we feel lonely and isolated and our hormones are more
Yeah.
volatile. So yeah, so that's the book. And I just pray it helps and reaches the women it needs to reach. So a lot of fun, good times, right? As you know, book launches and having a book, it's fun. It's
It's a
good. It's
lot.
kind of
It's a
like,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but it's
But
also helpful when, we can't work with every single person out there. So it's
a way
nice
to reach
just
the
to say,
masses,
yeah, like
for
here's a
sure.
book based on my gestalt, my clinical experience. I've been a doctor for over 2 decades, which is crazy. So it's nice, and it was something I was supposed to do. Yeah, so that's where the book came from, and now I love being on social media and podcasts to talk about hormones because there's a lot of Wild West hormone action, also big pharma sponsored hormone stuff going on right now. So it's a lot of bad information out there. So I really like to talk about hormones in a very clear,
Sure.
concise way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's get to.
You know the Wild West
Oh,
out there.
yes. Oh, yes. We were talking about this
Everyone's a
before
wellness expert.
totally. And we were talking about this before we pushed record. Like, at least in Iowa, we were the first hormone pellet clinic, period. And now they're like 52 or more than that. But I feel like you and I both have legitimate education on HRT, whatnot. And there are a lot of clinics whose provider goes to a training just for a weekend. I mean, they just get a little bit of training and suddenly they're announcing and marketing that they're offering hormone replacement therapy or functional medicine or whatnot. And there's so much more to it. You can't learn it in a
Yes.
weekend course. Like there's just so much more to it. So it's really
Yeah.
important to find a highly educated provider too. help you, especially if you're in perimenopause. So let's get to all that. But I do also want to ask, and I can certainly edit this out if I'm wrong, or if you don't want to share, but do you have your own autoimmunity journey as well? Is that part of your story?
Yes, yeah. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid.
Hmm.
And this is really why so many women get hypothyroid or low thyroid problems because of an autoimmune disease, which is very common in women, Hashimoto's, and it destroys their thyroid. And for me, any autoimmune disease is a red flag. Like you need to get to the root cause. Once a woman has one autoimmune disease, they're more likely to have a second.
Hmm.
It's a, it's root cause. It's not just treating the autoimmune disease with a rheumatologist or waiting until your thyroid is destroyed completely, which is what they told me after I had surgery. So it was literally, I was in medical school. They had been watching this thyroid nodule since high school. And this was when I started having cycle problems. I started having, PMS. And my mom asked for a thyroid panel because she read it funny
Yeah,
in
good
like
for her back then. Back
women's
then.
magazine.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And like, in the 90s in a women's world. But still, even with her advocating and kind of digging more, I was still, put down this conventional medicine track of, it's just horrible. And anyway, I just remember the endocrine or the ENT who took out my thyroid, he's like, good news, it's not cancer. And we were like, praise God. And because I was a first year medical student, that would have been horrible.
Oh, sure.
And he's like, it's Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I was a first year medical student, so we hadn't gotten into it. Was literally, I was just 6 months into being a medical student. And I didn't know what that was even yet. And he's like, oh, it's just an autoimmune disease. There's nothing you can do about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Until gosh, about like 6 years after that, I healed my gut. I had SIBO, I had chronic
Mhm.
constipation, even being on the correct thyroid, and then my Hashimoto's is gone. But it's so interesting to look back and like all the suffering I did, even though I was doing everything right. I remember advocating for T3,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, and bringing in the studies and crying as a medical student, saying, please just listen to me. I want T3. Like, I don't feel the same. I don't
yeah.
feel good. And, the fact that I had to beg for that as a medical student, right? It's very crazy. And, being a woman too, it was harder, I think, dealing with an autoimmune disease. But, these also autoimmune diseases appear in perimenopause out of nowhere because our body is less resilient to stress. So then we get gut health problem and then it turns into autoimmune disease. But I mean, there's hope. I have so many female patients that go into remission in perimenopause with their autoimmune diseases. I just had one just last week, she told me, and we were like having a little celebration. She got off her hydrochlorothiazide. Um, or
Sure.
hydroxychloroquine,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hydroxychloroquine. I'm not blood pressure, hydroxychloroquine from lupus. And lupus is really hard to get
Yeah,
into remission. And her rheumatologist was basically like annoyed about it. He's like, well, I guess you don't need to be on this anymore. And she's like, well, that was the point. We're reversing, my kidney health, we're reversing everything. So it's really exciting when, especially in perimenopause, we can get to like the root cause of it all
get patients
and
better. Yeah, have them not get
yeah,
worse. Yes, yes.
smooth sailing. But you would think, and I'm sure you always feel like this. I always tell my patients, like, I will give your doctor my cell phone and tell them what they can do or how they can start exploring integrative medicine to help their patients go in remission and off meds.
But they never
And
do. Yeah, yeah.
no one calls. So sad. I'm always waiting for them to call. But that being said, I did do a lecture on peptides for an osteopathic medical like national meeting, and
Cool.
I keep getting emails from docs, or they'll message me on Instagram and they'll be like, "Hey, I love this peptide lecture. I'm really interested in getting into this medicine. What do I do?" So I tell them to go get proper training and do a fellowship and start just igniting that curiosity. It's so great to see. So, for those listening, this is good. This is getting the curiosity back, especially with everything going on right now, with the HHS. It's just great to see that it is spiking
Things are finally,
curiosity.
yes, things are finally, the
Yes.
tables are finally turning, which I never knew if that would happen, but they finally are. Yes. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you put your Hashimoto's into remission. Do you want to share any of the major triggers? Well, you mentioned you had SIBO, but were there any other major triggers that
Mm.
you want to share that you
Oh
discovered?
yeah. Gluten.
Yeah.
Yep. Gluten. So yeah, I don't like wheat. I'm just like wheat. I mean, ancient grains and milling your own possibly, but I probably have celiac. Um, but there's also a lot of non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and I really think a
Hmm.
lot of that is from glyphosate. And this is
Sure.
Roundup that they're spraying on all the crops,
Yeah.
desiccating, drying out the crops. It's in our rainwater, and that pokes holes in your gut. So, even if you are having, just wheat or a bun every once in a while, you're getting a lot of glyphosate on that.
Hmm.
So, yeah, like my family, like we're like gluten free. Like there's no gluten in my house, except I do make one time, once a year, a nut roll for my parents and my sister because they still eat gluten. And yeah, that's the only time. But I like decon the kitchen and I'm like, it's really nice to work with like real flour. It's so much easier. But yeah, so we're all gluten free. But that's a big step that a lot of us, we tell our patients to just take gluten out for 6 to 8 weeks. Just
Hmm.
don't even know. I mean, I had a male patient. It was very interesting. He wouldn't go gluten free just for the longest time. I mean, I had been seeing him a year, and I'm like, can we just try it for 6 weeks? Just please, just give me 6 weeks. I know you eat out a lot for business. Like, so he did, and he came back to me and he's like, I had this weird chronic low back pain. And I just thought it was because I was getting older, was stiff. He's like, you know what? That went away completely, taking gluten out. And I knew this because it was gone. And then when I added it back in, it
Came
came
back.
back
Yeah.
because yeah, because I do tell patients if they're hesitant or they really don't think it's an issue, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
have a giant gluten pizza from your local pizza shop after
And see if you pay the
six to
price.
eight
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're listening out there and you've never given up gluten, done that kind of trial, try it. You don't really have anything to lose. You might lose weight and inflammation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
those are good things.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are good things to lose.
Totally agree. So let's get back to perimenopause. So tell us kind of what perimenopause is, just in case listeners don't know, and why. Then I guess I want to get to why it's the most important decade for women's longevity that no one is really talking about. But let's define it, what
Yeah.
perimenopause is.
Yeah, so perimenopause is the time before your body goes into full menopause, meaning ovaries are not releasing any more eggs, you are ceased having periods. And the crazy thing about this is it's different for each woman. So I think about like an oven, how different ovens preheat at different times.
Hmm.
Like you go over to someone's house and their oven takes 10 minutes while yours takes 20, it's different and we don't know. It's each individualized. And that's how
Yeah.
it is with patients. And you can get kind of an idea about when you're going into perimenopause by seeing when a sibling, an aunt, a mother would be the best, went
Sure.
into menopause. So that can kind of give you a better viewpoint. If your mom went into menopause at age 55, well, that, maybe around mid 40s, you're going to start feeling more perimenopause, like 8 to 10 years out. But it's not always the case. Sometimes it can be really different. Sometimes if people are very, very stressed out, we see a more aggressive
Hmm.
perimenopause. And really, we can define perimenopause, even early perimenopause, mid, and late. And the significance with that is late perimenopause, the 2 years before menopause, that is when we have really increasing FSH or follicle stimulating hormone. And we also have more risk for bone loss and things like that. So you do kind of want to treat them a little bit different. And that's when you do want to work with a doctor that knows what they're doing with hormones. So you can be more specialized during late perimenopause and maybe
Sure.
add in some, estriol if needed. But the big thing is lots of women are early perimenopause and it's not even on their radar. So they're
Sure.
getting anxious, they're getting
Yep.
heavier periods. Their cycles are just different. They have
Yep.
palpitations out of nowhere. And they're so young that, they go to their doctor and they think it's depression and give them, something for depression,
Something for
Prozac or
sleep,
something.
something for palpitation,
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yes. But it's a hormone problem. So why? So what's actually going on? So progesterone is just declining slowly. It just starts that decline. And then estradiol can be kind of erratic because you can have an anovulatory cycle or your body's like, hey, that egg is not really that good anymore. So I'm going to push out another one. So we have very erratic estradiol levels before it goes out. So it's kind of like an engine like sputtering where you get it like that
Yeah.
jolting
Yeah.
before it just dies versus progesterone, which is like, just like is declining.
Wah
So
wah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So progesterone is just like a game changer to give during women in this time during the luteal phase or that second half of their cycle. So you give it, you're mocking the natural cycle, you're mimicking the natural cycle, right? So that second half, if giving a little progesterone luteal phase can be helpful. Some women, if they're early perimenopause, like they're in their early 30s, we might give them Vitex or Chase Tree Berry, which
Hmm.
helps the body endogenously, or you make it yourself, produce some more progesterone. So sometimes that's really nice. Or sometimes in early perimenopause, I tell women just control, not just control, but control your stress better.
Yeah.
So then we're protecting that progesterone. So this is where I talk about in my book about cycle syncing. So we work with your hormones instead of against them. But it's so hard for women right now in their mid 30s, in their early 40s. I really travel sports is crazy sometimes because it's really stressful on patients. I just had to talk to a patient today. Two of her kids are in travel hockey and it's just insane for them. And I'm like, but are they going to go pro? Like, do we really need these travel sports? And she was like, no, they're not going pro. And I'm like, well, you need to sit down and just talk to everyone because, and being a Christian, this is something that like my husband and I talk to a lot about, like travel sports. We don't want them to interfere with church,
On
with Wednesday
Sunday.
night
Yeah.
church.
Or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or on Sundays, weekends. It's tough. So, I mean, we all need to reevaluate like what this busyness is doing because it's wrecking women's cortisol levels and
Hmm.
it's wrecking your relationship with your savior, which is real peace, which is, we need peace in perimenopause because
Yeah.
that's going
Yeah.
to help protect our hormones. So, yeah, I mean, I just love this group of women because not only am I going through it, I've helped so many women through it. And it could be such a beautiful time in their life. But it is difficult because you have young kids, growing up kids, and you have aging parents, and a lot of women are working now more than ever. So it's a lot to
Hmm.
juggle, and our hormones pay the price. And then we look for answers where we think it's the right place, but it's not. We get gaslit, we get put on meds, and like SSRIs, for example, if, that is kind of what doctors reach for now.
Hmm.
Everyone needs to be in an SSRI. Well, what are the side effects? Weight gain, lack of sex drive. So then it's like, oh, great. So now I'm gaining weight. I don't, I don't want to be intimate with my husband now. And then you have like further drift, if you're already stressed out and then the men don't understand what's going on. So a lot of this, if we just have open communication about what is really going on with a woman in perimenopause and how we can address it, it can just be, life changing for these women, their relationships and their family. Because if you get snappy, the week before your period, and that's a new symptom for you, you never had that before, where you're on edge, it's probably you have a luteal phase progesterone
Hmm.
deficiency. And we need to address that. So you're not feeling guilty for snapping at your kids. Your kids are wondering what you're going on. I mean, these are just stories I hear on
Hmm.
and on from patients.
Go back to cycle syncing. Is that what you called it?
Yes.
I'm not
Oh,
familiar.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But let's go back to
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So men, their hormones are 24 hours. Okay. They're the same every day, right? That's just how they are. Now, women, because we are blessed to be able to carry babies, have babies, we have a 28-day cycle. So this serves the purpose of releasing egg, getting our endometrium ready for the sperm, for fertilization, for implantation, all of that. So I don't know if you've noticed, or those listening out there, we're different during different phases of our cycle. Our motivation is different, our cravings are different, and there's reasons why that are science backed. So first we can talk about eating and nutrition. So a lot of the problems I've seen is women will they're gaining weight in perimenopause, right? They're gaining weight, they haven't changed anything, and they're like, this is crazy. So then they go online and they're like, oh, intermittent fasting, this person lost 10 pounds, right? I'm gonna do this. So they intermittent fast all throughout their cycle, all the same. Well, if they're doing this fasting the wrong part of their cycle, they're going to actually elicit a cortisol or stress response, which will actually have them gain weight. So the first half of the cycle, the follicular phase, estradiol, or estrogen, or dominant estrogen, estradiol is it's kind of the star of the show here. It's more dominant. And estrogen actually makes us more insulin sensitive. So we actually could handle carbs here better if we wanted to, but we're also more resilient here. We are more resilient to stress. Okay. So fasting, eating low carb, it's more of a stressor. So if we're gonna do that, we want to do that during the follicular phase where we're more resistant to stress. And we actually do better with, maybe doing keto, maybe doing carnivore for 2 weeks for gut rest or gut health. Maybe we want to do a 24-hour fast for autophagy or 36-hour fast for weight loss, or we want to do intermittent fasting for digestive rest. So this is when you want to do that. You're going to be more successful.
Outside
Now,
of the
luteal,
bleeding days, though, right? Would you agree outside of the bleeding days, or are you okay with that? There are
well,
differences in opinions. Yeah.
the first couple days of menses, you listen to your body, right? So usually you're coming off, all hormones are depleted here. And yeah, so because we're looking at, I like to just put it into two categories to keep it easier,
Right.
but
Easy. Yeah, yeah.
I have a full cycle syncing chart that is available for download on my website that
Oh,
those
cool. Yeah.
first couple days you might not want to jump right into it, but you're not going to feel it, but usually day 3 or 4, maybe 5, but for me, like day 3, 4, I'm like ready to go. Like the heaviness is over. I mean, if you're bleeding though,
Some people bleed really
heavy,
heavy. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
well, then that's
They need
a
progesterone. No,
symptom.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and you need estrogen detox too, so support. So, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be bleeding heavy for that long, and that's why, I talk about a lot of these root causes too. But follicular
Sure.
phase, you're gonna kick butt at doing fasting and stuff, and then luteal phase, you come in. Your body actually demands more calories during that luteal phase. It's more metabolically active, like it needs more calories. So if you're starving yourself, that's actually going to stress your body out and it's going to rob your progesterone and it's just not good. So you want to have more calories here. So have more healthy fats and proteins and have a little carbs. Have a little bit of carbs here. We're not meant to just be low carb 24/7. We're allowed to have some carbs here. And I think it also gives women this kind of like food freedom where like, okay, I can have more carbs, I can eat more here, and I'm not gonna like gain 1 million pounds because when you're going to your follicular phase, you're gonna rein it in a little bit. You're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna do a little faster. I'm just gonna have like smoothies and I'm just gonna do a liquid fast for 24 hours. I'm gonna not do sugar and get my cravings back under control, right? Because we know you can go off the rail and just like go on a sugar kick, it happens to all of us. And and I don't want people to do that during luteal phase, but if you have this mindset of I can always rein it back in here because my body is going to be more able to do that during this. So it's like less shame. And it's funny if you start actually paying attention to these cues in your
Huh.
cycle. It's kind of funny to watch. Like, I'm late luteal phase right now and I eat a lot. I do. And I'm not really worried about it. I'm not
Sure.
gonna eat tons of sugar,
Right.
but I also, we know that our weight can fluctuate a little bit and it does based on our
Hmm.
cycle. So, yeah, and that's one of the biggest mistake I see with women in perimenopause is that they just push harder, right? So they're gaining weight because they have a hormone problem, but they're pushing harder and working against their hormones. So they're doing carnivore harder, like I'm gonna only eat steak. like, I'm not going to eat eggs or, like, or they're like, I'm gonna just not eat. I'm just not gonna eat. And, I've seen women that they gain weight doing that because it's a cortisol response. Your body, like, we are not smarter than our body's like physiology. Like, we're not gonna beat that. Like, we're not
Yeah.
gonna beat our hormones. There's no way. So we have to work with our hormones.
Yep.
So that's like the big thing I see with food when it comes to perimenopause in women. And the other thing you have to understand, so as we go through perimenopause, like, more and more, it's not like when you're in your 20s and you can do whatever you want and you're going to compensate. We are less resilient in perimenopause. I would argue, and you might agree with this, women's hormones are easier to deal with in menopause because they're
They're
kind of
not
like set
fluctuating.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, you set it. You set it. It's not like set it and forget it. What is that? That's some sort of commercial. Remember that? Like set it and forget it.
Yeah, I
It's
don't know
not
what
like,
that.
yeah, it's
But
not like
I
that. Like you still
agree.
have to monitor
They're not
hormones, but it's
erratic. I mean, they get to
easier.
the point where they're just declined, then we can replace them.
Yes.
Versus in
Hmm.
perimenopause, they're all over the place. So back to
Yeah.
cycle syncing though. So that's really just, I shouldn't say just, but that sounds like you have a chart for this, kind of paying attention to how you
Yeah.
feel as far as what you do, how stressed you are, what you're eating, syncing those lifestyle factors with the week of the month you're in. Is that kind
Yeah.
of what? Okay.
Yeah, and now the other like I think this is so cool. So I really like nerd out on this. So the working out component, right? So I have a patient that she trained for a half marathon in perimenopause and it was between like our follow-up. So I didn't even know it was on her radar. And her hormones like tanked. Her testosterone like went to almost zero. Her progesterone was like a 3. She crossed the finish line 20 pounds heavier after like actually
Wow.
training, like
Training.
every
Whoa. Yeah.
because of cortisol. It stressed her body out. Her hormones were like, see
Wow.
ya, like I'm so stressed, like
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah. Don't do that again. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, yeah. And so she didn't want to go on hormones to replenish them. She just wanted to wait. And the testosterone I wouldn't have replaced because I knew that she usually was fine with testosterone. It's root cause. You don't just look at one time, one lab without fixing lifestyle first and prescribe hormones. That's not how it works. Her testosterone went from like zero point 0.3 back to 1.3 in 3 months. So if you're listening out there and you're going to someone for hormones and the first thing they do is prescribe hormones, that's also a bad call. Have to fix lifestyle and then recheck hormones. So her progesterone like bounced back up to like 13 or 14 because we went back to cycle syncing, working on the
Sure.
nervous system. So when working out, remember, I said the first half of the cycle more resilient to stress. So this is when your body is going to do HIIT workouts. If you want to do HIIT workouts, like Orange Theory or something, this is when you're going to like go for personal records, PRs in lifting weights. You're going to put on an extra, 5 to 10 pounds each set, whatever, when you're deadlifting. This is when you're less likely to get hurt during this phase of your cycle. So this is when you're going to do like all the really hard, excruciating, stressful things, training days, all that. And then the luteal phase is when your body is just like, this is when you just want to like hang out in pajamas and like eat some popcorn with like grass-fed butter on it. That's what I like to do. So this is when your body, because think about it, you're releasing that egg, the sperm you're fertilizing, and it's just like a nice, comfy, like uterus in there. Everything has to be chill, like candlelight, just to grow a baby. So this is
Hmm.
like what you want to do. You're not running from a bear. You're not doing HIIT workouts to lose weight. You're not trying to lose weight. Your body is trying to like reproduce. So this is what progesterone does. So if we're not working with our cycles, we're going to stress out. We're going to drop our progesterone. We're going to gain weight. Our body is going to fight us. It's going to affect our thyroid hormones, our insulin, all the things. So this half of the cycle is when you're going to do more mobility workouts. You can go on walks at an incline. You could wear a weighted vest, knock yourself out. You're not doing HIIT workouts. You're still lifting weights because women, we need to lift weights like all the time. We need to have that muscle, that lean muscle
Hmm.
mass. Like it's a metabolic buffer, keeps our bones
Hmm.
strong. So we still want to do that. But we're going to listen to our body. Like for example, yesterday, I'm late luteal phase, went to the gym. I did my lifting, but I didn't lift super heavy, but I lifted to fatigue. And then this morning, I'm just like, I'm just going to walk at a 12% incline at 3 miles per hour for 30 minutes, which is energy efficient and fat burning, but it's not stressing my body out.
Hmm.
So we need to listen and really like you'll start to know like when I'm in my follicular phase, I want to run sprints. I want to work on my VO2 max, which is a marker of longevity. There we go.
Hmm.
Bring it back to longevity. We need that stuff as women. But if I'm doing that during my luteal phase, I'm crashing out my hormones, stressing out my body, and studies show women are more likely to get hurt in their luteal phase. So they did a study in New England on a team of women soccer players. Well, football, they call it in England, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
but soccer, for us in the US. And they got more like injuries, more like tissue injuries, muscle injuries in the luteal phase of their cycle.
Hmm.
And it was funny. I gave a talk at A4M on cycle syncing, and my daughter was
Cool.
just
Yeah,
watching
yeah.
me because I was going through my slides, and she's like, "Is that really true, Mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I wonder if where I was at in my cycle when I had that really bad ankle sprain." And I'm like, "I bet you were luteal phase." So she went back to the picture on her phone, and then she went back to her tracker, and she was late luteal phase.
Hmm.
Totally, we thought she like tore ligaments. I mean,
Hmm.
it was good because it wasn't that bad and we used some peptides and stuff, but I mean this is a thing. There is another study that they did on travel teens. They were like in high school, and same thing, they looked at like muscle and injury strains and sprains. There was more in the luteal phase, and they even compared it to like broken bones and contusions or bruises,
Hmm.
and those were the same throughout the cycle. So this has to do with progesterone, with how our hormones are, how we feel in space. We're a little more clumsy in luteal phase.
Yep.
Relaxin,
Pretty sure I was luteal phase when I broke my knee. You're making me think back. I'm
no,
like, man, was I?
okay,
Yeah.
I want you
I
to
mean,
check
it was
that.
an accident. I fell on the ice, but maybe I was more clumsy because
Yes, this is like a
super
thing, and
interesting. Yeah.
it's really cool. And there's one college that they actually train their women based on their cycles, right? Because I feel like they should all be
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this. Okay, you're gonna go harder here so you don't get
Sure.
hurt. And this is something we should be paying attention to. And you could think, oh, just put all your sports members on birth control. But there's a study that shows that that doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
That's not preventing anything. So we need to work with our cycle. There's another cool study on women where they put women in two categories. One where they worked out every other day. Okay, this was strength workouts. Okay, so
Hmm.
when we talk about building muscle, the other one, they did it related to their menstrual cycle. So they worked out, or sorry, the first one, it was every 3 days. So every 3 days, consistent workout. This one, it was every other day during their follicular phase and then only once a week in their luteal phase. So they were doing more weightlifting during their follicular
Yep.
phase versus just, oh, I'm just
Sure.
doing the same workout. Well, the ones that did the menstrual related, where
Hmm.
they worked out every other day, more strength training their follicular phase, at the end of the study, they had more strength and they were testing like quadriceps. So,
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of a cool study. So it's like we really should be paying attention to this. And I think like gym owners, like this would be just such a cool thing to be like, here's your workout if you're in follicular phase versus luteal phase. But preventing injury is so important. I know sometimes I'll be stubborn and I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna squat, like I'm still gonna squat the same during my luteal phase. And I did that and I tweaked my back and I'm like, yep, never again. I'm like, I was being stubborn. I'm like, I'm just still gonna lift heavy. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
wonder how
so
many
pay
personal
attention to that.
trainers like pay attention to their client cycles. I mean, I know that's like personal, I guess, health information, but like I would be comfortable telling my trainer, like
I
yeah,
know. Yeah.
that's very interesting.
Well, yeah, and it's just, just be aware, like, planning trips or planning excursions, where are you at in your phase? It's interesting. I wonder, the Olympics, I know like Lindsey Vonn like totally like
Yes,
crashed
yes,
out her
yes. I feel
ACL.
so bad for her. Yeah.
Well, she's in perimenopause. And I'm
Yeah.
like, was anyone paying attention to this? Like, because, and I think about it, I'm like, this would be so cool as like a trainer if you had a bunch of, teens or whatever. I think back when I was doing, high school sports, like, only wearing like that ankle brace like during their luteal phase and taking it off in their follicular phase. Because if you wear it throughout, like that's making your joint
Mm,
unstable and weak.
sure.
So just use it. But anyway, I could go on. I think it's so cool because, this is not only performance stuff, but as we age, like if you're not using peptides, which are wonderful, but as we age, like it's harder to recover. But this is why there's people like us
Yep.
out there that we're obsessed with longevity and peptides and
Yep.
recovery because if you're biohacking like these things, which some are super easy, like some of the stuff I get, the things I'm talking about, like eating and working out, it's so easy, it's so simple, anyone can do it. And then once you like master that, then you can go on to like fun things and optimizing supplements and bioidentical hormones and all of that. But definitely pillars of health, like easy stuff like nutrition, so important. So cycle singing is just super fun. My family, like we have a joke about it. Like, I don't know, it was funny. Like this might be too much information, but intimacy too, right? So late luteal phase, like you're not gonna be like wanting to be touched as much, right? And
Yeah, picky and
ovulation, that
moody
is
and yeah, yep,
when,
yep.
yeah, yeah. I mean, but if you're moody, I would say like you probably just need some progesterone. But my husband was funny because I was like, oh, and he's like, wait, that's weird. Aren't you late luteal? I'm like, yeah, but it's not like hard and firm, like set point, like you're not going to want to be intimate then. But if your hormones aren't balanced, you're going to be like anxious, grumpy, like get away from me. This is where, peptides like PT-141 can be helpful
Mhm.
during late luteal phase in perimenopause when you still want that intimacy with your spouse, but you're not as motivated because your hormones are changing or you're stressed out, right? Stress is like the biggest thing. But yeah, PT-141 oxytocin nasal spray, that's it's kind of my favorite for perimenopausal women
I
with
recommend those a
sex
lot
drive.
too. I want to come back to those,
Yeah.
but before we get to peptides, I want to go back to hormones real quick just to build
Oh
on
yeah.
that, build up to the good stuff. So why would you say labs often look normal in perimenopause, even when women don't feel normal, when they feel bad?
Yeah. Well, I think it's tough because we are just like taking one snapshot. Okay. So I will just throw out sometimes, let's get some serum testing so we can look at everything that's blood work and we'll check on day 19 to 21, which would be the highest, progesterone would be the highest about 7 days after ovulation. So that can sometimes give us a decent answer. What
Yep.
is the estradiol? What is the progesterone? So sometimes that's enough. And I'm like, yeah, this is tanked. We can work on lifestyle. Or if they're like late perimenopause or middle, I'm like, no, we're just pulling out progesterone. It's going to change your life. So that can be helpful at times. The problem is though, is that yes, it's just one snapshot in time. There is some new technology that was being used more for fertility tracking that I think is a really cool tool in perimenopause, where you can look at a metabolite of estrogen and a metabolite of progesterone and FSH and LH throughout your cycle, or even check it every other day. So there is more personalized checking of that. But,
Sure.
you know, for late perimenopause, if you're checking one FSH, I mean, estradiol is so erratic that could not correlate at all. So I think with this daily FSH tracking, that is going to just change perimenopause hormone treatment for women, especially that late perimenopause where FSH can really just start to stay elevated and then that can impact bone loss.
Sure.
Another thing, so say someone went to like a med spa and they're on hormones and they still feel bad. And this is happening a lot because the virtual space is really exploding with like, come and see our doctors that probably have no hormone training and
Mm-hmm.
you can get on hormones.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like I was talking about my patient that had a tank testosterone. We fixed her lifestyle and then it went up. If we would have given her testosterone then, I bet you none of her symptoms would have gotten better because that wasn't the problem. And estradiol being really low in perimenopause, early or mid or even late, stress, if you don't fix stress in the adrenals, it's not going to help. So, we really have to make sure that we're fixing root causes first. And then second, we're doing the right test. So if someone is putting on topical or cream or pellet or, just anything topical and not oral, we really should be checking saliva hormones are going to be more helpful. So I've had women come to me on estrogen patch and they were still having symptoms and they just kept checking the serum, the blood test, which showed lower estrogen. So they just kept putting them on higher doses. So we get a saliva test, which shows more of like a tissue level, and it's super high. They're being way overdosed on estrogen, which is scary because that can cause to bad estrogen metabolites and to cancer possibly, especially if progesterone isn't being balanced. So that's something else that I see where the serum labs aren't showing it, but the
Sure.
saliva is going to see it. So that could happen. Also, we're not looking at the whole picture. Sometimes doctors, conventional, will refuse to get hormone labs because they say they change too much. So then we have no information to go on. They're not looking at cortisol, insulin and glucose. They're not looking at thyroid. So I think it's just so much. And honestly, conventional practitioners just aren't trained for this kind of nuances in perimenopause and menopause. It's very nuanced and it's not just about giving hormones, it's about how is the gut handling these hormones? Are they, breaking down estrogen? Are they recycling it? How's the liver doing? How's cortisol and insulin? So it's just, it's very complicated. So I get very concerned because yes, we're talking about hormones now, but no, it's just we can't just give hormones and that's it. And
Sure.
more and more women are coming to me, they're on hormones and they still feel horrible and they are very confused about that because they thought it would fix everything. So that's um that's something I don't know. I'm seeing it more and more since there's more talk about hormones. I don't know if you're seeing something similar, but it's very frustrating for these women.
Sure, sure. I want to go back to estrogen. We talked a little bit about progesterone, but in your opinion, why is daily estrogen not often appropriate in early or mid perimenopause, but when does daily estrogen become appropriate?
Yeah, this is where it gets very difficult because we're having this really erratic estradiol. So if we're giving daily estrogen, which I've had a lot of women come to me on this, they're in perimenopause, they were put on estrogen, the patch or the cream or some oral, which is scary. And it's a scary situation because first, we're not mimicking the natural cycle. And second, sometimes they're not protected with progesterone. And then we're not accounting for those really erratic high highs. So you're taking estrogen, and then your estrogen has an erratic, really high, higher than when you were in your 20s sometimes, because our body is that crazy in perimenopause. Um, that can cause concerns for estrogen dominant symptoms and also the detoxification of estrogen if we haven't really established that, which are you going down a good pathway for estrogen detoxification or a bad one, which is creating DNA damage, which could lead to cancer possibly. So that's a concern. And then this is where the newer technology for daily tracking of FSH during late perimenopause. And I've really just dove into the research about suppression of follicle stimulating hormone or FSH, because if we suppress FSH, then we can minimize bone loss. And there is bone loss before perimenopause, about 2 years before the studies are showing. So that's at late perimenopause. But how do we track that? Like, how do we know? Well, we track FSH. And this is where we could maybe give some estradiol if that FSH starts going up, give it. And then when we start to see it come down a lot, then we let up on the estradiol. So I think that this would be super personalized medicine. The patient would have to be very committed because we
Yep,
don't want to do harm. We don't want cancer.
right.
Now, I will give perimenopause women estriol, which is a weaker estrogen. And estriol can still it can still suppress FSH, so that's good. Now, because women in perimenopause, they are having brain fog, they are having memory, they're having joints that ache, right? So this is real. This estrogen loss is real because those lows are very low. So it's really about personalized medicine and informed consent and going by the study. So I will give a lot of these women estrel topically for the face, and it helps with wrinkles. They get a little bit of
Mhm.
absorption. They're also on progesterone already. Sometimes vaginal, they can get
Mhm.
estrel. Possibly estradiol, either just depending on what's going on, because that is still systemically absorbed. Not as much as if you're putting it on somewhere else, but vaginal estrogens are systemically absorbed. So we need to actually, realize that is true, because some urologists don't think so, and that drives me crazy. So, yeah, so I mean, it's very personalized if you're listening out there. Like, you want your hormones to be personalized to you. You don't want it just to be a checkbox, everyone gets the same things, because we are all, remember that preheating oven, we are all on a different path to perimenopause. And that's what makes it so tricky, I think, because menopause, it's like, okay, you're depleted. Like, your estrogen is depleted. Yes, we still have to make sure you're detoxifying estrogens well. Your progesterone, it's depleted. We still have to make personalized dosing because we all metabolize progesterone differently. Testosterone is one of those where about a third of women need it. Not every woman needs it. And please don't go on testosterone just for sex drive. There are so many other things that can help that. We don't want to give too much of any hormone. We don't want super physiological dosing. So I think those are some pearls for ladies listening out there.
Let's come back to the gut. So you mentioned this a little bit, but how does gut health connect to perimenopause symptoms, and why do you address this first?
Yes. So first of all, inflammation. If our gut is not healthy, we can have inflammation, and we can also have cortisol and stress on the body. So that's big, because when we look at stress on the body and cortisol and insulin, that goes back to progesterone and progesterone production and how it's used. So we always want to make sure that we are treating root causes that could stress out the body. The gut is also such a cool place because we have an estrone biome. So our estrogen is actually, so it's metabolized in the liver, and then it goes to the gut, and it's either recycled or it's eliminated. So it should be eliminated, most of it. So we don't want to recycle estrogens and toxins. And this goes back to a little enzyme called beta glucuronidase. And you can actually test in some gut tests if you
Mhm.
have a high amount of that enzyme or a low. A lot of the times I do just support women that are more estrogen dominant, or like, their mother had a hysterectomy at age 40 for heavy periods. We know genetically they're not metabolizing estrogen well. So calcium D-glucarate is a good thing to help. Also, like eating fiber. Fiber is helpful with eliminating that estrogen. So it's really like a whole body approach. And if we are taking estradiol in menopause, if we're on hormones, we need to make sure that we are eliminating those
Mhm.
hormones safely. And really, though, our estrogen elimination and our hormone health should start in our 20s, with eliminating
Yeah.
plastic and
Yep.
fragrance. And yeah, and I go into all that detail in the book, because our environment for our hormones, like what we're exposing ourselves to, eating or drinking, can affect our gut, our hormones from, we want to start in our 20s. But if you're in your 40s or
It's not
30s
too
or
late.
50s,
Yeah.
yes, never too late. So I do want to say that. But yeah, it is really important to have a good functioning gut health.
I want to get to peptides and to faith, but I want to go back quickly just to what your core framework for treating women in perimenopause is. And maybe that's just outlined all in your book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely we want to treat the environment, the body, and then a spiritual component. So the environment, we want to make our environment as clean as we can. It's so many things, like mold can really impact our
Mhm.
hormones and mycotoxins. So it's just kind of looking at it. And that's the thing, like, if you don't know what to look for or things that can be causing problems, like, it's not going to change, or it's never going to, light bulb's not going to go off. So just like going through all those things is important, because any environmental stressor is a stressor on our body and our hormones. And women in perimenopause, as I mentioned before, are less, they get less resilient. So mast cells is like a big, example. So a woman never had any problem. All of a sudden, they're itching and having histamine response in perimenopause. Well, your body compensated for that mold infection or for Lyme for
Hmm.
years. Your immune system was fine. But then, as your estradiol is fluctuating, your immune system just is kind of crashing out and things are getting worse. And this is, like I just had an appointment with one of my postpartum mamas and she's getting sick a lot. And I'm like, oh, I wanted you to go on that supplement to support your immune system because your estrogen, because your breastfeeding is tanked, went from high to low. So this affects everything. And then our body, what we're putting in our body, how we're, processing our estrogen, our liver health, our gut health, all of that is important. And then our spiritual health, like, do we
Yeah.
have peace? Are we stressed? So I rely on Jesus for my peace. And it wasn't always like that. My identity was in being a mother and a doctor, and I thought I was doing the right stuff. And, I wasn't spending time with what would really give me peace. I wasn't reading my Bible. So I see that because I do see a lot of spiritual attacks, strongholds. I see heart splinters from trauma.
Mm.
Trauma is
Yeah.
big. What you're feeding your mind with, if you're listening to lyrics that are very toxic, and you're memorizing them if you're listening to them.
Yeah.
So we just have to be aware people we're surrounded by, all that stuff. So that can really impact you, because I've had patients that are so optimal on everything, but they are so operating in a sympathetic overload, fight or flight. And we have to work on their parasympathetic. We have to, heal past trauma, like miscarriages, like all of that really matters. And it's affecting your hormone health, whether you know it or not. And that's the thing, we could biohack and do everything perfectly, but if we don't have that spiritual component, we're not going to get there. And I've just seen that, over 20 years of practicing medicine. And that's why I'm more outspoken about it now, because I really know it's that important.
So as you were maybe you didn't research, maybe we're researching other perimenopause books. Did you feel like there weren't many that incorporated faith? Like is yours one of the few that does?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just talk about Jesus unashamed all the time. Like, saved by Jesus, saved by
Yeah, yeah,
grace,
yeah.
not by works. Yeah, yeah, probably just me. Yeah. I mean, there's a spiritual component out there, but it's new age. So one thing
Mm.
I talk about in my book is how I was a yoga instructor, had a yoga studio. I got very sidetracked, and because my identity was not rooted in Jesus, I was distracted, right? And oh, it was dark. Oh, the new age is pretty dark. Like it's disguised. It's
Yeah.
darkness disguised as light, which I think Paul talks about in the Bible. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a gamble in a business, to be honest, like being that outwardly open
Hmm.
about being a Christian. But it was just, I'm being obedient. I'm being obedient and planting seeds. And I am not judging anyone if they think that that is not a big part. And I just pray for them to have eyes to see and ears to hear. And yeah, I mean, part of my experience being in the new age and yoga, um, I think that that was on purpose. So I could talk to that, because that is what I'm surrounded by when I go to conferences. I'm kind of like the odd one out, but that's okay, because when they have questions and concerns, or, my friends that have different religion than me, they come to me to ask questions. And I just feel so blessed for that, that I am there. I had someone ask me, to pray for them and their son about a situation. And I just felt like so blessed to be able to do that, that they asked me.
Sure.
So, yeah, so a little bit different, but I don't think it would be a turnoff to anyone that maybe wouldn't identify as a Christian, because all the road work is there. And, if it's working for my patients, it might work for them.
Sure. And so I think you do include daily devotionals alongside your health
Mhm.
protocols in your books, right? In your book, I should say.
Yeah, yeah. At the end, I have, if you want to do the daily devotions, it's at the end. And a lot of like what I have been through, and I share that because I think that sharing what we've been through, health struggles, spiritual struggles, is very important to know that we are not alone because,
Hmm.
that's how the lion gets their prey, isolates a sheep from
Hmm.
the flock.
Hmm.
So we don't want that.
No, we don't. Okay, let's come back to peptides. We'll conclude on peptides. So can you
Sounds
share,
good.
you kind of already have, but we'll go more in depth with what peptides you're excited about for perimenopausal women specifically.
Yeah. Well, everyone loves GLP-1s, semaglutide, tirzepatide. We all talk about that. And one thing that I think it's great, I think it's great for inflammation. I think it's great for getting, the blood glucose stable. They're fasting insulin down. Do I think women should be on it high doses forever? No. I think the smaller doses, the micro doses are better, just to give them that edge. I mean, sometimes they will try everything
Hmm.
and they just like need to overcome that insulin resistance.
Yep.
Sometimes I have patients that berberine and metformin work fine,
Hmm.
but sometimes not, right? Sometimes it's more of an emotional thing with eating. Sometimes it's an inflammation. Sometimes their gut health like isn't recovering fast enough. So I do use this a lot in women. I think it's great. I think it really can help. One thing I've started doing with my patients, because last year a patient told me, she's like, I know I'm supposed to go to like every other week and, try to like ramp down on this. She's like, but actually, I just started using it during my luteal phase and it helps with my food noise. And I'm like, you're a genius. I'm
Yeah,
like, of
makes sense.
course.
Yeah, yeah.
Why wouldn't we cycle that? So I do have a lot of my perimenopausal women, like, if we're using it for a couple months just to get those insulin levels improved, while we're working on their stress levels, because honestly, it's usually stress levels with these women. I just went over a continuous glucose monitor with one of my patients today, and it was her work that's stressing her around. She knows that, and we're trying to ramp down and figure stuff out. But like 11 and 4, I'm like, what are you doing every Monday through Friday, 11 to 4? And she's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. So we're going to use a GLP-1 to kind of calm things down while we're working on our cortisol. But yeah, cycling women, think about it, just during your luteal phase. Remember I said follicular, you're like just you're not unstoppable, but you're good. Like you can like not, give in to cravings more. That luteal phase, you're gonna have more food noise. You're gonna be like, eat the cookie, like it's fine, right? And that's not bad, but we don't want to go out of control. Or if someone like will binge, like if they eat one cookie, they eat 12, right? The GLP-1, that will help with that. So that one's great. That's fabulous, but we have to be smart. We have to lift weights. We have to have protein. We have to stay hydrated. We should not be on a dose that we're so nauseous we don't eat all day. Skinny
Yeah.
is not in. It's hard to gain muscle past 40. You're losing muscle 1 to 2% each year. It's actually like when I look at women, I do not think they look good if they're really skinny. They're not. They don't. It's you want that nice muscle tone. And a little bit of fat is okay. You want some fat because it's a hormone buffer, okay? So don't compare yourself to all those influencers out there, doctors included, that are doing all these crazy things. A lot of them are more androgenic and have a higher androgen load their whole life. Like, no, don't do it. Just look at yourself. How's your energy? Do you look in the mirror? Are you tired? Are you not? If you have a little extra weight, like that's okay as long as it's not visceral or in the stomach, right? If you're storing that weight on your hips and your butt, that's what I do. Like it's a little buffer in perimenopause. That's cool. Like you're fine. So I think that's important for people to realize. Like the trend is not like skinny. It's just not. It's not a good health trend. It's not a good longevity trend. That is not, it's not good. Um, and then I mentioned PT-141 and oxytocin. So
Hmm.
this is going to be like an arousal peptide.
Hmm.
Men and women can use it. The PT-141 gets you more in the mood. The oxytocin is more for that bonding. You can also increase your oxytocin by hugging for like more than 30 seconds, like a long hug. Like, the people that are weird when they hug for a long time, well, they're actually smart. because it's not just a quick hug. You have to actually like hug for like 30 seconds, I think I read. So those ones are great. We're stressed. Our gut health takes the brunt of that stress. So yes, things like lorazepam, KPV, BPC 157, those are going to be helpful when it comes to that. There's a plant-derived peptide called PeptiStrong. It's from the fava bean.
Hmm.
2.4 grams a day can help maintain muscle and decrease soreness after workouts. So that one I usually have patients on while they're on a GLP-1. You can also, to maintain or build muscle, do an ipamorelin, CJC 1295, ceramorelin, like as we were talking about earlier, that's good too. That's dosed 5 nights a week. You need a 2-day break to reset those receptors. I've had people that just, they just get peptides online from China or whatever. And this guy was like, oh, I'm taking it every night. I'm like, no,
I know
like
I've had so many patients do that too. I'm like, no, you have to cycle these, or they've taken them for
yes.
yeah, like a year and without ever stopping. Oh my gosh.
Or checking their IGF,
Right.
one, and we're like, what is going on? So, oh yeah, so those are good peptides. Love them. And then, if you are having like aches or pains or recovery issues, or you injure yourself, luteal phase, TB4 and BPC 157, the Wolverine, that one's a good one too. So lots of good peptides, but make sure you're getting it from a compounding pharmacy, from your doctor or provider. Like, they are your guide. The internet is not your guide for peptides. Just please. Same with hormones. Like, stop. Like, it's it's good education, but like, no, you need someone like, yeah, that if they tell you the wrong thing, they're held accountable. I guess that's a good way to put it, right? Like, you need someone that is going to walk with you, not just, listen to a podcast and you're out. Like, you're off to do peptides on your own, and then you're not doing them right. And
Yep.
there's consequences. And
Yep.
for me, like, I don't recommend research only peptides. I have patients get it from a compounding pharmacy
Yep.
because the FDA does have control over them and is going in and making sure that the peptides are what they say they are and they don't have contaminants. So how bad would it be if you were injecting yourself with something that had contaminants in it? Like, that's very dangerous. So just, it's such a buzzword now. I remember 10 years ago, no one even talked about peptides. So
Yeah, agreed. Well, tell us, this has been a wealth of information. So tell us about your book and where listeners can find you and it.
yes, of course. So the book is The Perimenopause Reset, and just look up by Dr. Jen P, or just go to drjenbook.com, probably easiest to find it. And I hang out on Instagram and YouTube at Integrative Dr. Mom, Integrative DR Mom. And my website, Healthy by Dr. Jen, has everything on it, a blog, link to my book, and just anything you need is there. So please reach out if anyone has questions either.
Awesome. Last but not least, what is your top longevity tip?
Yes. So this is the ultimate hack for longevity is reading your Bible. So you can have eternal longevity. But seriously, I would say
Yes, no
the
one said
last
that. That's so good. That is
year,
the
no
best
one said
longevity
that.
tip. No, no one said that.
Well,
Yeah.
I go to some of these and I'm like, you just talk to people and they just don't have peace. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wouldn't it be great to just have like actual peace and
Yes.
feel like in the justification of knowing that your eternity is secured. So yeah, and if anyone ever has questions, like I say on my Instagram, I can't give medical advice, but I can pray for you. I will voice memo you a prayer anytime if anyone needs it or has questions. So,
That's very generous. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. Anything else you want to share, or did
thank
we cover
you.
it all?
No, that was fun. I will be praying for your knee that it has like
Oh,
quick
thank you.
healing. How many places is it broken? The
Just right
patella?
down the middle, just vertical
Oh, split.
fracture. Yep.
Okay. So it could have been worse.
It definitely could have been worse. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get you on some Wolverine peptides.
That stack. Yes. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show today, breaking all this down. I think a lot of women listening are going to have many light bulb moments listening. We haven't had many shows just specifically dedicated to perimenopause. So I'm glad we did this today. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise in writing the book and especially that you incorporated your faith into it. So thanks for coming on the show. This was great.
Thanks.